Well, I guess we're both better than Matt Rhule right now, although 4 years of dead money being paid to you.
I would like that.
You know,
I mean, like, that's a silver lining for my guy.
So what do you think went wrong in Carolina? Your best guess?
Well, I mean, they just didn't. I mean, they've been playing quarterback carousel, and none of them hit. And, like, this was a Hail Mary from Matt Rhule, and it just didn't work out. It hasn't worked out, and for a guy who can probably hang his hat on the offensive side of the ball, they just haven't. They're a defensive football team, and that's why I think the interesting conversation is going to be what kind of head coach do you bring in? What's on David Tepper's mind? I mean, I know people make a lot of the Sean Payton waiting for the Dallas job, but and Jerry might still have ideas, but McCarthy's coaching those guys up pretty good. And, is Carolina an attractive job for people? Is David Tepper the kind of owner that you're excited about working for? I would think so. I mean, what happens in the NFC South when Brady retires? So I don't know. You're going to have a high pick. There's a lot of quarterbacks next year. I love D'Amico Ryans. I love what San Francisco's defense is about. I think culture building is awesome. I think guys like Ben Johnson in Detroit, although if you're Ben Johnson and you're like, oh, Tepper might get fired today, let me have a good day out here in Foxborough, and you get blanked, you're like, damn, that's a bad impression to leave. There's a lot of guys that could nab this job, and I don't know which direction they go. I think that the interesting question is, you're going to have a young quarterback. Do you want a defensive head coach? Because if you have a really good young quarterback, you can make one of these young OCs a king by just playing well, and then that guy's going to get a head coach job in the next couple of years. So that's my biggest concern when you hire a defensive head coach with a young quarterback, because it almost guarantees that if things go well, you're going to have to retool from a schematic standpoint offensively within the first couple of years.
What do you think?
Otherwise, I don't care. Like, just build a culture, win.
What do you think is going through Baker Mayfield's mind right now?
Oh, man, it sucks, man. I feel for the guy on one hand. On one hand, like, sometimes he hasn't helped himself. Definitely not on the field, but some of the things he said at times. He's had a lot thrown at him in the first couple of years, but that's the NFL, man. There's a ton of draft picks that get dropped in inopportune situations, and oftentimes the higher you get picked, the more chaotic it is. And then to end up in Carolina in kind of an even worse situation than where you came from and expect to go well, it feels like the end of the road. And the problem is, like, with Baker, he's so variable that, like, if he's not going to be a starter in the NFL anymore, like, do you feel like he's your Brian Hoyer? He's got that starter mentality, and it's going to be hard to make that transition if this is the end of the road for him.
Well, you mentioned Sean Payton's name, and clearly David Tepper now is, going to be all over him. I mean, I'd imagine the wooing process begins, and when that happens, trigger fingers get itchier in other places too. And I've heard Payton's name associated with Denver as well, and not because they're ready to just out Nathaniel Hackett, but the way the first 5 weeks have gone, and play calling, and Russell, being in an offense that's a timing offense and things of that nature. And I think you were the one who pointed out he's so off schedule. So what do you think of that scenario? We haven't spoken since that stinkerama that kicked off week 5.
Well, it's potentially, and by the way, Rich, I was really entertained by the game, not by the football, but by the fact that, like, we all watched it.
Yes.
Isn't it amazing that Roger Goodell found the floor? Like, he was like, we'll see. Like, how bad can a game be? And everybody still watch. What's the retention rate on this game? Because I know some Denver fans left, but if you watch 60 of that game, you're going to watch 70. And we really found out how much we love football. I really believe, Rich, if we want to solve something as a country, we should convince people it's under the guise of, like, football being existentially threatened, and we can do anything as a nation together, because people love that game, dude. Like, we watched that game for 70 minutes. So yeah, I guess to say the Broncos look awful. I don't know that there's like a light at the end of the tunnel for them. I didn't pick the Broncos to go to the playoffs. I didn't know it would be this bad. I also think you could see the decline a little bit with Russ. Like, I'm not saying he can't pull himself out of this thing, but that Russ magic hasn't been there. The magic oftentimes, when he'd go to the well to get that big off-schedule play in Seattle for so many years, like that's dried up the last couple of years. And they haven't run his stuff in Denver. And, I think of Sean Payton. He said something really interesting about Russell Wilson. I heard him say last week. He said, I don't know why Nathaniel Hackett doesn't sit down with him for an extended period of time and ask him, what do you like? Like, what can we run that's going to suit your skill set? What concepts did you like in Seattle? And I don't want to assume he hasn't done that, but it's interesting that was Sean's thought process, and we're here talking about Nathaniel Hackett already, but Sean Payton with anybody is exciting. Like, I had Sean Payton on my pod. Mm-hmm. He was driving across Louisiana, and he went for an hour, 50 minutes, and we talked football the whole time. That guy's football mind is, like, incredible. I mean, situational football, offensive football, the stories that he's able to draw from, the anecdotes. Like, I would – like, if I have a favorite quarterback, there's barely anybody I'd rather have paired with that quarterback than Sean Payton. I mean, whoever nabs him is going to be pretty lucky, and maybe it is